What's up, guys? I hope that you're having a glorious day. Today, me and Cody are going to talk about the importance of balancing compassion and violence. And the reason that we're going to talk about it is because it seems to be that there's either one extreme or the other. It's either you're extremely violent and you hate everything and you think that you just need to be angry all the time and have no compassion towards anything, or you need to be completely passive and just let people walk all over you and never do harm to another person or get angry or anything like that. And like everything else in the world, the answer is in the middle. You need to be willing to be violent if needed, but compassionate as well. And if you're one or the other, you're going to have difficulties in this world because this is not how real life is. When you look at nature can be very peaceful, or nature can be the most disturbing thing you've ever seen in your life. Watch National Geographic once and you'll quickly realize that.
I follow a few Instagram pages.
Yeah, dude, it gets gnarly.
Yeah.
You know, just watching a lion take down its prey. But there's a reason that the animals that succeed in this world and the ones that are at the top of the food chain are the ones that are willing to do whatever it takes to survive. The issue is that we no longer have to do that nowadays. We become out of touch with how the real world works. We think that everything is just flowers and rainbows and peace and positivity and all that. And as great as that would be, that is not true.
That wasn't true throughout, human evolution. That's not true now. And it won't be true in the future.
Well, that's also why you can't suppress those urges. If you need to be aggressive at times, then you need to embrace that for everything that it is and go full out. Usually that is only in life and death situations, though. Say if someone approaches you on the street and they have a gun and they say, "Give me all your money." You have a decision to make there. Now, if you just have an altercation with someone because they rubbed you the wrong way, is that a reason to get upset and violent towards that person because you guys are both at the bar and you had one too many drinks and they looked at you the wrong way or some stupid shit like that? It's always usually a misunderstanding when we get mad or whenever we get into an altercation with another person. It's usually a misunderstanding. But also, if someone just completely disrespects you and they step up and they're looking for that fight, you have a decision to make, and you need to be willing to turn that on, and you need to be real with yourself and realize it for what it is, that this is how the world works, and you can't deny that.
No, I think we get, so caught up in, our civilization and what we built, and what we see every day. If you live in the city and you have no interaction with nature, that, cruelty aspect of nature kind of gets pushed to the side, and it just becomes kind of irrelevant, because it is not presented in a continuous fashion versus living out in the middle of the woods and you see things eat each other all the time. It's kind of a different perspective there, which I think that's where we kind of lost touch with, it's not all, sunshine and rainbows, that violence does occur, and it almost has to, it had to for us to survive, and it has to for every other animal species on this planet to survive.
We can't just ignore that.
No.
And that's the issue nowadays, is that we try to ignore all that stuff. Oh, it's primitive. That doesn't apply to modern day society. No, modern day society is just in denial about how the real world works. And as soon as something small happens, and you're put back into the real world, you're going to be fucked because you're not prepared for it. And that's the whole point of this episode, is to be okay with both. Don't be the guy that thinks he's an alpha male because he's always cold and he doesn't ever show emotion. Yeah, invisible lat syndrome, emotionless face, doesn't ever tell his kids that he loves them, all this stupid shit. And we know a lot of people like that. But then we also know the other side of it too, where you just have weak people that lets the world walk all over them. And guess what? They're not going to get anywhere because of that. Now, if you're okay with not moving up and not being successful, then yeah, I mean, just being passive and shit and letting people walk all over you, like, cool, whatever. That's your thing. That's your decision to make. But if you are an individual that wants to attack life at full force, you need to be willing to have confrontations with people. You need to be willing to fight for what you believe in. You need to be willing to stick up for you and your family. And you need to be willing to do whatever it takes if put in that situation where your life is on the line or your family is in danger or your friends or anything for that matter. You can't just ignore that fact. Because if you ignore that fact, guess what? You'll probably be fucking dead. You're going to be eaten.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be anywhere close to where we are as a being today if there was no violence present.
Well, that's what doesn't make sense to me as a society nowadays. Over the past 100 years, we think that we're just so much better than our ancestors that have been doing shit for hundreds of thousands of years. We've advanced that much over the past 50 to 100 years where this is no longer relevant to us. Now, there are certain things. I think a lot of wars are unnecessary.
Oh, for sure.
I will 100% say that. I think a lot of wars are unnecessary, just like I think a lot of altercations are unnecessary. Because like I said, it's usually a misunderstanding or it's just someone that's super power hungry, which that's not the topic of this conversation. But we think that we're better than our ancestors. And we think that being primitive is bad. Being primitive is just the way of the world. And the more that you can learn to embrace those two worlds, being, a compassionate human that cares and loves yourself and the outside world, but also being primitive and embracing that animalistic instinct of yours, that's how you succeed. That's how you thrive in this world, is by embracing both of them, because that's what it kind of boils down to. Being empathetic, that's human. That's being a human. That's consciousness. And then you have the primitive side, the thing that has allowed us to become the dominant species, which is aggression and violence and all that. But if you mix those two, you're a balanced individual. You're not one or the other. You are balanced. And I think that's what people should work towards being. Now, how do they go about doing that? For one, it's having self-awareness. It's not allowing your thoughts and emotions to dictate your entire life. It's questioning those things. Just because you have a thought does not make it true. That is programmed into you probably based off what your parents did, your friends that you hung out with in high school, the shows that you watched, the video games you played, the books you read, all this shit. That's where your thoughts come from. That doesn't necessarily make it the right decision. Just because you think it does not make it true. You need to question your thoughts, but you also need to question your emotions. You don't need to ignore your emotions. They're there for a purpose. But if you're getting really mad at someone, you need to be able to detach from it and be like, is this appropriate? Is this actually going to help me? Or is my animal brain just kind of taking over right now? Am I in fight or flight for no real reason?
That comes with having a good handle and a good range of your emotions. Do you automatically default to that primitive animalistic side that you're talking about, or can you center yourself and be understanding of whatever situation you're going through?
I think it's a matter of harnessing it.
Yeah.
It's realizing that yes, you have this primitive person inside of you, and that person can fucking conquer. But then you also have a compassionate person that is realistic and that doesn't just fly off the handle and that can actually think for themselves, that has control over themselves. You have to harness it. You have to harness both aspects, being compassionate and being violent. You can't just choose one side or the other. Like I said earlier in this episode, you have men that won't tell their kids that they love them because he thinks it's soft. Why does he think it's soft? Because someone told him that it was growing up. Because he watched it on TV. Because that's not what an alpha male looks like.
That's not what a man is.
That's not what a man is. No, that's bullshit.
That is exactly what a man is.
A man loves his fucking family. A man is not afraid to express his emotions because he doesn't give a shit what anyone else thinks.
Yeah. I used to have a big problem with that.
Did you?
Yeah. It was just...
You think it's your upbringing?
Yeah. That was a big part of it. Just didn't want to show shit.
Well, it's because it's considered weakness.
It is. And it's what a lot of people see as weakness when it's the exact opposite.
Right.
Of that.
What's weak is not expressing yourself. Because what it boils down to is being afraid. I'm afraid to show my emotion because of what other people might think, or because it might, make me seem less powerful. Here's the thing. I can be upset. You might see me upset. Maybe I'm sad. I'm just depressed. I look like a little bitch. You can't be depressed and look like a badass. It's just not. It's a very low energy thing. You know what I mean? But I can also turn around, and if I'm angry, I can show that emotion. And if I'm happy, I can be fucking happy. And if either you take it or you leave it. But I'm not going to suppress that because I'm scared of what you might think or how it might portray me to the rest of the world, because I'm confident in who the fuck I am.
Right. And you have that range of your emotions, but you also have the capability of acting on that range of emotion as well.
If needed.
Yeah.
If needed.
And it comes down to that balancing act you're talking about. The situations that we kind of not put ourselves in, but we're subjected to, they're very circumstantial with a lot of different factors behind them. It's not like a one size fits all. Like, oh, if this, and this happened, like this is how I would react. No, these situations are very dynamic, and you have to put yourself in a very, understanding and empathetic mode, but also understand that if you need to handle some shit, that you have to do that as well.
Well, it's a matter of confidence. The more confident someone is to do violence, the less likely they are to do it. The most dangerous people that I know will avoid a altercation like that at all costs. If someone approaches them on the street or in the bar, they're going to try to de-escalate the situation and separate themselves from it instead of just acting on it and trying to fight this person. Even though this person definitely has the ability to destroy this other individual, but they choose not to because they have control over themselves. And the way that they have control of themselves is because they are confident. And they became confident because they practiced. They harnessed these skills. They learned how to fight. They know that they're strong because they work out, they exercise, they're a healthy individual. They know how to properly shoot a gun. They're not just some fucking gangbanger on the street that has a pistol that he's never shot. No, these people, they practiced it. They're tactical.
They understand their capabilities.
Right. And they know that I can kill this person with my hands, but I don't want it to come down to that. And I also know that this is probably a misunderstanding. So maybe let's try to separate ourselves from it. Let's try to get rid of this instead of just acting on it. But if push comes to shove, those people will take care of business. They're not just going to be passive and allow someone to walk all over them or to beat their ass. No, I don't believe in violence. Is that how those people approach those situations? Let's think about it. Because like I said, there's extremes on both ends. It's like the passive individual that just believes in peace and that they don't really think that violence is necessary and all that shit. What would happen? Well, the reason they think that is because they've never been put in these situations. But if they were, how do you think they would actually handle it? And in their head, do they actually believe that this is how they would handle it? If someone punches them and they're down on the ground and they're just wailing the shit out of them, do they just lay there flat and say, I don't believe in violence?
I was thinking about that too. What if there's just a community of, no violence, and then someone shows up, or a whole group of people show up wanting to commit acts of violence and take your shit? What's going to happen? I mean, they're just going to get ran all over. You have to have protectors and you have to have empaths. But if you mix those two and you have the best of both worlds, that is a very dynamic individual.
You know what this reminds me of? The beginning of the Viking Age. When the Vikings were just coming up, plundering and pillaging churches because the churches believed that there was no such thing as violence and that violence wasn't necessary, and they weren't prepared for this situation. Then you had Vikings come along, they're like, fuck it, I'm going to take all your shit and I'm going to kill you because you're not willing to do anything. But guess what happened a few hundred years later? Knights Templar, shit like that. Or even then, you had the kingdom, Wessex and stuff like that, the different kingdoms in England, they started protecting these churches and stuff. But either way, we saw how that worked out for them because violence isn't necessary. Violence is real. That's what it reminded me of, though.
Yeah, I mean, you're
But
exactly right.
what did they do in that situation? I doubt they stood up for themselves. I don't know. I'm not necessarily judging anyone right now.
No.
I'm just like, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I'm trying to put myself in these people's shoes, because to me, I can't imagine just laying there and be like, I'm not going to do anything. But then I don't know, like you have people like Gandhi, which is like, violence is unnecessary. You know?
In our reality, in a perfect world, it is. It is. But, we're, like I said previously, it hasn't been that. It's not like that now, and it's never going to be that way in the future because of, of consciousness. Like it always gets us into that situation.
There's a reason that this is how the world is.
Yeah.
I'm not a very religious person. Actually, I don't identify with any religion. But obviously, like, things are a reason. Things are how they are for a reason. And violence has always been here. The universe in general is violence. If you look at the Big Bang Theory, that is the most violent thing to ever happen in existence. This giant fucking explosion.
Us.
That created us. That created life. That created planets. That created the universe. All this different stuff. All started with violence. If whatever created all this, I don't know. I'm not trying to go down that.
Yeah, that wasn't a this is what we believe in statement. That was just an understanding statement.
Yeah, it's just an understanding. But I do think that the world is how it is for a reason. And the more that you accept that and you realize it for what it is, and you prepare yourself for these situations where it's like, yeah, I don't want to have to fight someone, but I'm prepared to if needed. That's the whole point here. But also be willing to put yourself in other people's shoes. When you have a misunderstanding with someone, don't just fly off the deep end. Put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, I've been in situations where, it has escalated to a very aggressive situation. But then it turns right around and you fix it with compassion.
Well, think of it, what I just had this imagery, like the bros that get into a fight, then afterwards they buy each other a beer. The reason that fight happened is because of a misunderstanding. And it
didn't need to happen in the first place. You should have just bought him a beer to begin with.
Yeah, he's just like, yo, dude, like this isn't worth fighting over. Here's a beer. Calm down, But that just goes to prove the point again. It's like it's always a misunderstanding usually. Unless someone is like confronting you on the street or breaking into your house or something like that. That's not a misunderstanding. In that situation, you need to do whatever it takes. But once again, I've never been robbed. I don't necessarily know how I would handle that situation. I'm not trying to be Johnny Badass on the podcast right now and say, yeah, if someone approached me on the street with a gun, I'd stand up for myself and whatever. No, if someone's like, give me your wallet, I'm going to shoot you. I'd probably be like, yeah, here's the fucking wallet, dude.
Yeah,
like,
whatever.
Here, go away.
Yeah.
Get away from me.
Well, I think that's a big problem. Like, that's what everybody does. They're if I got in a fight, this is what I would do.
No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. Shut the hell up. You'd piss yourself and cry and all this other shit.
If someone puts a gun in my face and wants to steal my car, this is what I'm going to do.
I don't really know what I would do in that situation. But a part of me is like, I'd probably just give him the fucking car because it's just a car. Is it worth me risking my life over? But also, like, I don't have an ego issue with that. I don't think I'm the baddest dude to walk this earth. I know I'm not. That's okay. But I also know that if someone threatens my kid or someone like legitimately like tries to hurt me just for the sake of hurting me, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I'm willing to do that. Now I'm going to try to avoid the situation. But like I said, if someone approaches you and they mean harm, and when someone means harm, you can see someone when they're walking up, like this person is up to no good. This person is going to start some shit. You can prepare yourself for that. But yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of being aware and being willing to make that decision if necessary. Do I need to defend myself or can I de-escalate the situation? But as far as being compassionate goes, try to put yourself in other people's shoes. If someone's robbing you, fuck that person.
Yeah.
Like I'm not like, well, maybe they just lost their job and they need money. No, like
you're not going to take my shit.
Yeah, fuck you.
Yeah.
No, that's not going to happen. Or you might take my shit. I won't be happy about it. I guess
Right.
it depends on how big you are and how big the gun is. But either way, that in my book, no. Maybe afterwards, I might like question it, like, why did this dude rob me? But in that moment, no, like it's life or death. And I think that there's probably a part of us that kicks in those situations where we go, we just lose it. We know it's that primitive side. You harness that primitive side. But there's a way that you can harness that primitive side in everyday life. You can kind of prepare yourself for it. And that's just by putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, building that confidence. Doing like learning how to fight. When I started Muay Thai, dude, I was so bad at it. I was so bad. And I thought going into it, I was like, I know how to throw a punch. I did not know how to throw a proper punch, dude. And then when I came to kicking, holy shit, what a train wreck. And I'm still not great at it. But either way, like I'm more confident than I was a year ago with it. But going into it, I was like, yeah, I can fight. No, I didn't. But the more that I learned, the more like, honestly, like I don't want to fight. I don't want to.
No, and I think it really comes down to, being confident in your ability to be dynamic and, mold yourself to these situations and think very quickly on your feet. If you're presented with a situation like this, like how are you going to act? But you don't know how you're going to act because every circumstance is going to be unique, just like every interaction is unique. You have to be able to put yourself in a state where you can think clearly and try to understand the situation, but also be ready to knock someone's head off if you need to.
You need to be able to detach from the situation. And sometimes that's not possible. Like you're in the deep of stuff. But if as much as possible, you need to detach and observe the whole scheme of things. What's actually going on here? Because obviously I'm in fight or flight.
Yeah.
And when you're in fight or flight, you are not thinking properly. When you are mad or upset or anything like that, you are not thinking clearly. Everyone knows that because that's why you always feel like a jackass after you get mad about something. You're like, was that really worth it? I just feel stupid for getting mad about that small thing. But at the moment, it's like, yeah, this is worth it. You're not thinking clearly. So like, yeah, it's exactly what you said. You need to be able to separate yourself from it and examine the whole spectrum.
Yeah, but you need to take that step back a little bit, but not too far enough where you're not going to react if something happens.
Right. You don't want to be thinking about, am I handling this situation right? Then you get your ass knocked out real quick.
Yeah. It has to be, very in the moment. And when you've been in critical situations, they teach you teaches you.
Yeah. Well, any training, that's what training does. So when you're doing like tactical training or even fighting, jujitsu, stuff like that, you want to remain calm. And I think that's what all this boils down to. Like that's the answer there. So yeah, you don't necessarily have time to detach, but you do have the option to remain calm as much as possible. I mean, yeah, your blood pressure is going to be up, your adrenaline is going to be soaring. Like you have all this different shit going on in the moment. But if you can breathe and you can be calm, you can better handle this situation.
It allows you to think on a much more clear level.
What helps you remain calm in those kind of situations? Confidence. How do you gain confidence? By practicing as much as possible. It's being realistic and preparing for the situation. Well, like I said, like I do Muay Thai. I like Muay Thai. It's fun. But the main reason I do it is because like I want to be prepared. I want to have the confidence that if I'm put in this situation, that I can handle myself. Same with firearms. I'm not a big gun fanatic. I have guns, but I'm not like huge on them, but I know how to shoot the damn things. When it comes to working out, I work out. Yeah, I mean, there's like mental benefits to it, but I work out because I want to be physically fit, which goes back to being prepared. That's how everything that I do is based around that. Now, I'm not the best in any of those things, but I'm working on it.
Well, the difference is you don't do those things strictly to be a cruel person.
No.
Which some people do.
Some people just love violence.
Some people do, and that's
Well, if you listen to
Terrible.
like Mike Tyson's
That's horrible.
old like interviews and stuff, or his recent interviews, he's a very empathetic person now. He's very compassionate, compared to like the Mike Tyson back in the 80s. That was the most violent person to walk this planet. And he took pride in that. And that's what he talks about is like he was a monster. And he hates that side of him. He hates that he allowed himself to become such a hateful individual. And this has come from Mike Tyson, best boxer ever, in my opinion. There are others great ones as well. But like Mike Tyson was known as being a absolute monster. Then the dude did a bunch of mushrooms and he's like, actually, that's kind of fucked up how it was. I kind of regret that, but it allowed him to be the best.
Well, now he understands the entirety of the situation.
Well,
too.
he could also turn it on. He's training for a fight right now. The dude's coming back. He's like 60, but you know what? He knows how to harness it. When he gets into that ring, he's going to turn it on. But then afterwards, he's not going to let it control him. He's not a cruel person. But he realizes how life is. Life is violent at times. Sometimes it's for sport. It is what it is. Like, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it. I enjoy a good, like watching MMA and stuff as well, UFC, all that good stuff, or Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu. I enjoy that. It's a primitive side of me, though.
Yeah, but I enjoy it too. But I also enjoy the art of it. Which is what it is too.
Yeah, so. It's 100% the art of it, but it's also knowing the amount of work. That's what I enjoy. Watching athletes in general, knowing the amount of work that these individuals had to put into it to perfect their skills. That's admirable. And you don't see that any more than you do in like martial arts and stuff like that, because it's primitive, man. And they turn into someone else. But you see with lifting and stuff too, you have some people that can harness that primitive side that will help them on the platform, say with powerlifting and strongman and stuff like that. They harness it and it helps them. And I'm saying you can't neglect your primitive side, but you also can't let it control you. Being empathetic and compassionate and stuff like that, that's human. That's part of being a human. You need to embrace that. But you also need to realize the other side of you. And that's violent and it's aggressive, because that's just how the world works. So like everything, guys, the answer is in the middle. Be prepared for whatever it takes, but also have control of yourself. And we're going to wrap it up with that for today. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Norse Mentality. This podcast is a product of Norse Fitness. You can find out more about Norse Fitness by visiting the website, norsefitness.co. You can find me online at Andrew Cliff Lewis. Actually, that's on Instagram, not just online. Cody, how can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Cody_Whitley.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, guys. We will talk to you soon.